Hey everybody, welcome to our next session in our educational workshop series. So again, thank you for joining us here at our the next session of our educational workshop series, how to get more out of ServiceNow. In this particular case, we're going to be talking about CMDB use cases, and we've got a couple of rock star speakers for you today. We're super excited to introduce. If you might go to the next page, please. The next slide. Thank you. Our first speaker today is Tariq Rahman, and he's a technical architect here at CDW, and he's been delivering technical solutions for our customers on the ServiceNow platform since 2012. He has delivered solutions in many areas, but his current focus is ITOM, as well as asset management and obviously configuration management. Our other guest speaker that we are expecting to be on the call at some point here yet today is Doc Burnham. Doc comes to us most recently from his own company called Southern Dakota Solutions. He spent 7 years, I believe, with ServiceNow itself, and was the director, he was manager of compliance and delivery for the ITOM space. Thank you. I'll get that out. He is absolutely incredible. We love to have him. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tariq. Tariq, it's all yours.
Hey, thanks, Rick. Appreciate the warm welcome. So hey, everyone. This is Tariq Rahman. It's a pleasure to be with you today. And as Rick mentioned, it's going to be Doc and myself. I have a little issue with Doc. I'm not sure. I know he's been traveling, so hopefully everything was okay. But we'll see if he joins us.
Yeah, and Tariq, real quick, if you don't mind, I'm going to just interrupt you real quick. I just want a couple of housekeeping items that I forgot to mention. If any of you have questions, we're going to keep you all on mute just for the flow of the webinar. But please ask questions in the chat box, and we'll try to get to your questions at some point towards the end. And I know there's going to be some great questions, so please get them in there. Again, Tariq, sorry to interrupt. Please take it back.
All right, no problem. So this webinar is actually part of a series we're doing on the CMDB. Our last webinar actually has been posted to YouTube. And Latanya, if you can post that link in the chat, please, I'd appreciate it. So just so you don't have to try and grab the what's written here. But this was our last one. And there she put it in. So you can grab that one and keep it handy. So going into the agenda for today, during today's session, we'll begin with a little bit of configuration management and the CMDB. Then we'll dive into the use cases. But first, we have a poll question. So a lot of times as organizations, we have multiple priorities, and a lot of times it's trying to fight for those resources to be able to fund our priorities, our initiatives and projects. And so we're looking to see what challenges have you had with either funding or supporting new CMDB initiatives. All right, so we'll go ahead and put that poll up there. We have a few answers, right? Very challenging at every level, meaning you have to really scrape and fight for it. Manager and IT approvals are okay, but really getting into finance, it's difficult. Or no, some questions and paperwork, but no real challenge, or no, and these are just expected. This is the run of business. So if we can put a couple, minutes on there, and we'll go ahead and give you some time to answer these questions. All righty. So let's go ahead and can we share the results? There we go. All right. So so we had, looks like the majority of people did have difficulties. The next one was manager and IT. We had probably about let's say a few folks coming in saying that they didn't have any issues. Okay, all right, kind of as expected, right? A lot of times people don't understand what the CMDB does, and hopefully with this session you'll have some ideas to try to build that support for the CMDB as we go forward. So let's go ahead and jump into the next slide. So as I said, we're going to start with the background on the CMDB. And first off, we'll look at what exactly CMDB is. So before we jump into the use cases, we're briefly going to cover the basics. Of course, if you have any questions, please ask them during our Q&A session to the end of this webinar, or get in touch with your CDW account rep. So we're talking about configuration management. Your IT organization uses lots of different systems in order to deliver services to your business. The practice of managing these systems is configuration management. And we also have the CMDB, right? This is used to store configuration records such as hardware and software throughout their lifecycle and maintain the relationships between them. Then we get into really the CMDB within ServiceNow. And this is a little fact sheet here about the CMDB application. As you can see right here, it does provide that functionality to allow you to use or to implement that concept of a CMDB within the system. It's part of the IT workflow, but really, as you can see down below, it is part of the core platform. So the CMDB, really, you do not pay for it anything extra, right? The actual CMDB tables, etc., they're all there. There may be some plugins you may need to enable, but pretty much it is there in the base system. So we move on to this one, and when we talk about the CMDB, we need to understand that we're not talking just about devices and device information. There are so many different data points and relationships to represent in today's CMDB. These data points and relationships are what will enable the use cases we will be sharing during today's webinar. On this slide, as you can see here, we have a hierarchical view of the CMDB. So regardless of what use case you might be interested in, it is critical that the underlying data, you can see right here, this foundational data, this infrastructure data, is accurate and relevant. If there are problems in the underlying data, whether you have it in the foundational section here or the infrastructure section, your ability to extract functionality at the higher levels, which is up here, will be impacted. So you definitely want to make sure that this data is strong, it's clean, and it's reliable, and it's up to date. No CMDB topic within ServiceNow, at least, can be complete without some mention of the common services data model. This is something that ServiceNow essentially built a couple of years ago, and it's up to version 4 today. And this model is really what ServiceNow uses in order to build the CMDB and establish relationships. So in order to achieve the benefits of using the CMDB, we must understand and align with the way the CMDB is meant to be used. ServiceNow CMDB is structured and used according to this model, and it clearly defines the roles of users, whether they are owners or consumers, by the specific area of IT they occupy. Additionally, CSDM provides guidance regarding the foundational data the CMDB is dependent on to achieve the desired outcomes. So we have another poll question, and this one is regarding how heavily is your organization leveraging a centralized CMDB? So is this really primarily you gather a few things in there and you maybe power incidents and problem, or how extensive is your organization taking advantage of your CMDB today? And we have a few answers here, right? So none, either not using it today or in the process of creating it. Either you're at the basic level supporting only incident or change. The supporting, low is supporting more than incident and change to include some additional use cases. So you have maybe not just ITSM powered by the CMDB, but maybe you also have IRM, GRC, security, etc. that might be using the CMDB. And finally, we have medium or high supporting multiple areas to include ITSM, IT asset, security, IRM, etc. But you're also looking to add capabilities there too. All right, so if we can put the poll up there, please, we'll go ahead and start the timer. And we'll take probably about a minute to gather results.
Hey, Tarek, sorry to interrupt. This is Mike Roberts, one of the producers. We just had a technical glitch. Did not have this poll available to put up into the webinar at this point. If there's some more commentary you want to add, we'll have to probably just move on. I apologize for that.
No problem, no problem. Oh, I see Doc's on as well with us, so that's awesome. All right, so we'll skip this one for now. And
we do have some people answering in the chat, and so there might be some conversation that you would want to offer based on some of that. Looks like there's a lot of B's, there's a D. So yeah, if some people wanted to put it in there, you can certainly kind of pivot real quick.
All right. Well, that is awesome. Thank you guys for the creative thought there. Just putting it into the chat. So yeah, it does look like we have quite a few B's, some C's and D's. Yeah. See 1A. All right. All right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for putting that in there. So if I'm not sure, Mike or Latanya, if you have the ability maybe to take a note of what we have there, and then we'll maybe circle back near the end, because I think we should have a little bit of time at the end to just determine, have some time for Q&A, and if not, we show the results. But thank you all for doing that and being flexible. So let's move on to the actual use cases, right? This is where we're going to be working on today. And first off, let's take a look at the ServiceNow applications and how they relate to the CMDB. So we have quite a few of these, right? IT operations, service management to the top left, and to the bottom right, we have customer service management. We'll be covering use cases in many of these areas that are shown on this slide. As we can see, the CMDB is the foundation for many of the capabilities in the Now platform. Those areas shown as very critical. Other areas marked as critical, they heavily leverage the CMDB in delivering business value, while areas marked as high, such as, let's see, these with the purple, right? These areas will be enhanced by leveraging the CMDB, meaning that you can gain the basic functionality of that specific area without using the CMDB. But if you did take advantage of the CMDB, you can still gain a lot more functionality. So let's start off with ITOM, IT Operations Management. Your IT organization uses a multitude of systems in order to deliver services to business. As complexity increases, the capability of the maintenance systems must also increase. So imagine moving from a few racks in a server room to building out an entire data center. That drastically increases system complexity. In ITOM, though, simplicity is key. A good ITOM system must be able to work with detailed amounts of data while also efficiently communicating statuses to the right operations person to help ensure any issues are highlighted quickly. Many of you are familiar with ServiceNow's ITOM toolset. Coming from just the discovery application, I started there, when was it, 2014, right? Long time ago these days, right? It has now expanded to include a lot more capabilities. But still, discovery is usually the place people start when we talk about ServiceNow's ITOM. So discovery is a mechanism, for those of you who are not that familiar, to efficiently discover your CIs, whether they are physical, virtual, or cloud-based. Discovery can also discover applications, storage networks, your entire cloud or vCenter infrastructure. Recently, I worked with a customer in the past to get discovery in. The data that they got on their storage networks, it really opened their eyes. They didn't see that before. These were the IT service guys, not the server or storage guys. So when they saw this data coming up in ServiceNow, they were like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. They had no idea what was there in the storage side of things. And oops, I apologize. And so we have another customer, and this is the more recent one, who is working on actually chargebacks based on storage use by tracing the LUNs back to the application service. So interesting concept, right? You have a large enough organization with a lot of storage. You want to actually be able to charge back because people are taking advantage of the service. Why not charge the departments for the use of the service? And that is possible. Event management allows us to ingest event information. So this is the ITOM health area here, from third-party monitoring systems, as well as ServiceNow's own installable monitoring agent and the health log analytics feature. This information is processed, simplified, and eventually shown on the operator workspace, either in the alert queue and or directly on your service maps to help operations folks quickly identify problem areas. Then we have the last one here, which includes cloud provisioning and governance. It provides and we'll go into more detail later on with cloud specifically, but for right now, CPG, cloud provisioning and governance, It provides a cloud catalog for managing cloud resources, which allows IT users to request and manage cloud resources while ServiceNow handles approvals and the actual deployment, whether you're working with ServiceNow to directly deploy these resources into the cloud, or you want ServiceNow to first go through Terraform to then have that the resources deployed from Terraform. Arguably, whichever ServiceNow ITOM suite you implement, the ability to populate the CMDB is perhaps the most critical feature. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the population of data. So there are a number of methods ServiceNow's ITOM visibility suite can use to populate the CMDB. So ITOM visibility contains discovery, service mapping, and the service graph connectors for SCCM, et cetera, right? So all of these things are available with the visibility suite. But first, we have the agent-based method. As you can see right up here, the agent client collector. This was released actually early this year. Then we have the service mapping method. After that, we have various other discovery mechanisms, traditional discovery, which is IP-based discovery. We have service graph connectors, and then we have manual imports. But notice that they all pass the discover data through this thing called the IRE, the Identification and Reconciliation Engine, prior to the data reaching the CMDB. The IRE is a phenomenal tool that allows us to define per class, if needed, specific methods to determine how the multi-source data is merged together. So a lot of times you're trying to figure out, okay, well, we have 3 sources of data trying to enrich the same records within the CMDB. Is that possible? The answer is yes. So recently, we've been working on a customer project where Intune and Kaseya data were imported alongside discovery data. This is an interesting use case, right? Regarding Kaseya, the customer chose to see Kaseya data as more reliable than discovery data, right? So that was just their organizational decision to trust Kaseya more than discovery. Okay, it's fine. And in order to do that, we configured what we call the data precedence feature in the IRE to give Kaseya data a higher degree of precedence compared to discovery, which protects Kaseya data from being overwritten by discovery. So if you have that sort of use case of wanting to implement, that's what you can do. Just a little note on that. So we did the Kaseya data using custom REST integration and Intune via service graph connector. For those of you in the middle of implementations, considering implementations, and so on, we do have some of that data available for you. All right, so let's move on. And with ServiceNow ITOM, we can leverage the power of the CMDB to assign devices to specific support groups. So when, for example, when an alert is created for a specific CI, right here, an incident can also be created, right? So the alert comes into, the event comes into ServiceNow. ServiceNow creates the alert. ServiceNow generates the incident, and then the incident can be assigned or auto-assigned if needed to the support group of that CI. So this is the CI record, and by the CI record being linked on the incident, we have the ability to grab that support group and put it on the incident, and so you have an auto-assignment. This streamlining saves the ops team from then having to manually triage the alert, create the incident, and then assign the incident to the correct assignment group. So some efficiency to be gained there. And also, it's going to be a little bit more accurate, right? Sometimes it's difficult finding the right group to assign an incident to. And this way, you help to prevent some of that hot potato that happens sometimes. When it comes to troubleshooting, it is very useful to have an understanding of what the big picture looks like. ServiceNow, especially with top-down service mapping and event management, allows alerts to show directly against service or dependency maps, which allows teams to quickly drill into the problem area and troubleshoot. Now we get to ITSM, and this is the area of the ServiceNow platform that has been pretty much the most popular over the years. The platform was built with ITSM as its preliminary focus. So a lot of times, ITSM you find is that first step for most organizations to get into the Now platform. Usually, when we speak about ITSM, incident management, problem management, change management, and the related practices, these are the ones that come to mind. Each of these areas works best when they are leveraging the CMDB. Now, how does it use the CMDB? Well, it's really enhanced via the ITSM, right? All of it, incident, problem, change, request, everything, it's enhanced. Now, how is it enhanced? If you take a look, every single one of those main task records, an incident record, a problem record, change record, they all have a primary CI record that you can actually select in there. Now, let's take a look at the use cases. So, one second here. Yeah, here we go. So it goes without saying that there are numerous use cases when it comes to ITSM. With a CMDB in place, we can take a CI and look at its incident history, for example. How many times has the hard drive failed on that CI? And if you want to even extrapolate on top of that, how many times has a hard drive failure occurred on this model of CI? So not just the one CI, but across all CIs of this type. We can do metrics and pull that. Okay, so auto assignment is probably not the right word here, right? The next one here is auto assignment. But what we usually do is use a suggested assignment. And we can do that based on the CI type chosen on the incident. So it's not a good practice really to just have an auto assignment, except if it's for a very specific purpose, right? That's why I'm saying it's probably not a good idea to use that. But we do have that concept of the suggested assignment. So whichever service desk person comes upon an incident, they can see, oh, if it's this CI, it probably should be routed to this group. So therefore, it's a very simple, okay, I'm going to do this. Yep, go ahead, accept, done, move on. And then that way, this person doesn't spend a ton of time triaging and can move on quickly to the next incident. When we submit, and like I said, we can do that based on the CI type. Now, when we submit incidents against the devices we used, wouldn't it be cool if ServiceNow can actually ask us which device the incident is regarding and then allow us to pick from a menu? So I can actually pull up a form and see, hey, these are my 3 devices that I have, or 2 laptops, mobile device, whatever. And I can pick that device from a menu and say, okay, this is the device that I'm using. So again, this is possible with a CMDB in place where device assignment is being tracked. And we can look at problem management. And again, just like with incident, we have the ability to see the history of a specific CI or class of CIs in terms of getting to the root cause of a problem. So looking at change management, and I know this is a little bit of a long section, right, ITSM, but hopefully it does give you some ideas, even if ITSM is...
If you don't mind, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Back on that last slide.
Uh-huh.
When you said that it can be auto assigned based on the CI type, is that
right.
the same as auto populating attribute values?
It's auto populating the assignment group field on the incident, but that's not something, like I said, it's auto assigned is a nice little sort of a catchphrase or a catch term. It kind of, ooh, this is nice. It does something automatically, right? And so I put it in there, but then really what we say is suggested assignment. Because
so how would we auto populate attribute values such as a CI owner or cloud resources?
Yep. And so if we go back to the slide before, right? And let's see if I can get it. This slide right here. So as long as we have the specific CI listed, right? And the support group is filled in on the CI record, or maybe on the parent class record, either way, as long as it's a parent-child relationship, we can grab this data and actually populate it on the incident form from the CI.
Understood.
Okay,
thank you.
Yep, no problem. Yep, and definitely keep those questions coming. I'm sure we'll have some time at the end to work through them. But yeah, absolutely. So talking about impacted CIs, one of the biggest worries of a team considering a change to a CI is what application services will be impacted as a result of the change. This is especially true in large organizations with complex IT environments. With a CMDB in place and application services used, ServiceNow is able to automatically identify CIs that may be impacted as a result of the change. And therefore, it really helps it to simplify that process. How risky is a change? That's a question a lot of times we have to answer. It depends to a degree on the business criticality of the systems involved. With a CMDB in place and business criticality being tracked, ServiceNow can easily include the risk of a change based on the business criticality of the CI. And you can do this either using the base tools that ServiceNow gives to you. In one case, we had a customer who said, listen, we don't like the way ServiceNow does the basic things, so we went ahead and built a custom risk assessment for them that they were able to use based on a number of attributes of the CI, along with the different questions that the requester put in. We compiled all of this, built a score, and then set the risk based on that. So pretty cool stuff once you have the CMDB in place. Let's talk about approvals, right? So many times we have devices that support multiple application services. Therefore, in order to perform a major change to that CI, some companies require approval from all of the application owner groups prior to the change being approved by the CAB. So I'm sure some of you are out there, right, with that sort of experience or requirement. With service maps in place, it is quite easy to determine which services ACI affects. Change workflows can be configured to capture the approval groups of these services and automatically generate approval requests as a result. Let's talk about request. Now, request is not a huge area for the CMDB, but again, instead of a boilerplate service catalog, wouldn't it be cool for your catalog to actually know you and your situation? For example, a desktop user can order a webcam, while a mobile device user can order a charging cable, right? And these people will not see each other's options unless, of course, they fall in the same category. So some things that you could do for request in the catalog itself. I'm going to switch here to Doc to cover some on IT asset management. So Doc, take it away, sir.
Yes, this is Doc here for when we're looking at IT asset management or ITOM. As you know, it's a business practice that involves, how do we manage, procure, utilize, and dispose of all of our IT assets. And in some cases, that is hardware. In other cases, it's software and or data. Now, the objective of any of the asset management programs is to understand the complete life cycle of the asset within the environment throughout its complete life cycle. Now, that means I want this item. How do we collect that information? How do we put it on the catalog? And then how do we turn around to get that information out in that catalog so it can be picked up, can be ordered? How do we put it in the system? All of that, including how do we deploy it? And then when it's deployed, if we don't need it, how do we bring it back and decommission it? So we get it decommissioned. And then the decision, do we repurpose that and redeploy it? Or do we turn around and dispose of it? Now, so some of this here, we do it because asset management is constantly updated on how we do different things, especially with Ham Pro and SAM Pro out there. But the same objective is out there. How do we know what our assets are throughout its life cycle? Now, from that perspective, we want to address, what do we own? That's the asset side of it. What did we buy in the financial aspects? What is deployed and what is being used? That's the operational data. That's coming in from the CMDB. And of course, when we're looking at the asset management side, it is people, processes, and the platform, the technology. And there's no two companies that are the same of way they do this. So how do we take advantage of a CMDB though? Like I said, we're looking at what is deployed. And then, so that way we have it. And that way we've also got, what is being used. So we're looking at what's deployed, like Tark had said, that's the thing out there from a ITOM perspective, bringing all that data in. So we want to know what is actually deployed out there. We need details on it because from an asset perspective, that's one of our assets. Where's it out there? Now it's converted into a CI, but we're also looking at the software perspective of that. So that way we can look at those. The reason is because when we're doing it, we need to know what software is deployed where. So besides getting all the details on those, and we're looking out there, the bigger thing, especially in the software side of it, is what's deployed out there, what are we getting in from that information versus what should we be getting in. We've had customers where you turn around and, especially in software, it shows you have 5,000, devices out there, compute devices, servers, and desktop environment. Well, actually, they may have more. Some of those items may be blocked by a firewall or not being scanned correctly, so it's not bringing the data in. So it may not hurt some of the hardware perspective of it, but it sure does for the software perspective. So we need to know that that software is actually installed out there. And unless we get that scan in on the hardware from the ITOM side of it, we can't use it to calculate our license position from a software perspective. And then it's not being utilized, correctly out there with it. So that's one of the things that we look at from a CMDB. If we're expecting X number of hardware devices out there, we should see that information out there. Same thing with software. And we're commonly seeing new versions of software out there, of course. They're updated daily, as you know. So how do we get some of that data coming in so we can get that information over here? So it's what do we see in the CMDB and what we're expecting. Now, the other area that we work with, especially in the CMDB, is what is being used. Pretty straightforward for hardware. Either you're using it or you're not. But if you're not, how do we bring it back in so we can bring it back in to the stock rooms and redeploy it so we can have a value from cost savings or hard dollar or software, but we get a value on it. The harder one comes to when it's software, because software is out there. It can be used directly, just like it's on your laptop. You can use Microsoft Office or Adobe, Acrobat, or any of those. But it's the secondary or the indirect use of that software a lot of times. That comes in especially when we're dealing with an application, like the HR application will be out there, but it has a database in the background. So that way we can get this one here. That way we have that, it's using that database in the background, so we need to make sure we're licensed for it. So that's the secondary use or indirect use. Now, we're looking at that usage data, just like we're looking at hardware it's deployed. That can support cost allocations or chargebacks to get back into those environments. If you're using the software or it's deployed in your environment, then we can see it. That way we can chart. The other part of it is if you have it deployed in your environment on your laptop or server or whatever, and you're not using it, you're still going to be charged for it. But we can see if there's usage data being collected, we can bring that back in, and then we can look at it and say, this is a target for reconciliation. So we can, to reclaim it, we can pull it in back from the computer it's on and redeploy it out there. But we're looking for all of that, all usage data on there, but that comes in from a different system. SCCM's got usage data, the agent client collector for ServiceNow's discovery can bring it in, and a host of other tools. So that's what we use. So we're looking at these. Now, the one thing when we're also looking for assets out here, we're used to seeing assets, and we have a bad habit sometimes of using asset and CI interchangeably. But from our perspective, looking at it, an asset tells us the financial data in contracts and ownership, where the CI part of it tells us the operational data. When it comes to virtualization, if it's a virtual device out there, we want that as a CI. It still has software installed on it, so we can track that. We can do cost utilization or allocations or chargebacks. But since it's a virtual device, we do not want that to create an asset because you don't own that other asset part of it. Now, as example is VMware. The VMware host is an asset because it is a device out there that we can use. So that way we can get it. That way we can then use that to say, this is the asset. which devices or guests are assigned to it, so that way we can see it. And we need to know, especially in virtualization, how that works. What is the host and which guests are on it? That drastically affects the software licensing calculations that come across there, because it will affect how many licenses you need, the type of licenses that you will need. So that's what we're looking at from an asset management. Now, some of the other aspects that we deal with from asset management, we'll turn around and say, is this being, like I said, is it being used? Is it deployed? The other one is we're looking for, this item has a end of life. If there's an end of life on it from a hardware perspective, we're going to want to know that, because if it's still deployed in our environments, it may be causing some of the other issues. Same thing with software. We want to know end of life for software, because it may no longer be supported, have security patches for it, that type, which means it'll cause some vulnerabilities, if it's not taken care of in there. So that's what we're looking from an asset management. We live on a lot of that CMDB data because it supports the other half of it. Okay, I will turn it back over to Tark here for some stuff.
All right, thank you, Doc. Yeah, so Doc is our resident asset expert, and he has definitely been a real game changer in the industry, at least in the ServiceNow world, and I'm sure outside of that as well. So just sharing some of that. Now let's go on to IT security. So this is an area that's of critical importance in today's IT landscape. If we were to do a poll on everyone here, I'm sure the vast majority of us, myself included, have been affected by at least one security breach in recent years. IT security is committed to protecting organizations' IT landscapes from threats, ensuring the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of IT assets. So ServiceNow's SecOps, or the Security Operations Toolset, it's a comprehensive suite of applications that enables IT security teams to proactively monitor the landscape for threats and coordinate a response when threats are detected. It's able to ingest data from multiple third-party security tools and then prioritize the response based on the business impact. Let's discuss now some of the data that can be helpful to IT security teams. First of all, the CMDB data can provide an inventory of hardware devices on the network. Whenever an incident comes in regarding a specific device, IT security can quickly access details about the device from the CMDB in order to determine the best course of action. User information is also readily available. You click on a CI, you can see who it's assigned to, etc. Secondly, the CMDB has a record of all deployed software that has been installed to devices in the network. And obviously, the assumption here is that you're populating this data in some way, whether it's via discovery, SCCM, or some other source of this data that you're pushing it into the CMDB. So with the software that's been installed, in the event a vulnerability has been detected, these devices can be easily grouped and users identified so that action can be taken. Further, the presence of unauthorized software can be handled in a similar fashion. So you can look through for specific processes, running processes, installed software inside of ServiceNow without having to go to a third-party tool. You could do the tool as well, but once you find it there in that tool, you can come into ServiceNow, replicate the query, and then use the ServiceNow relationships to group these, find the users, and then take action. If you subscribe to the ServiceNow SecOps toolset, you're able to leverage the CMDB even more. Your vulnerability tools can feed ServiceNow, which can then bind the data to the specific CIs in the CMDB and tell you right there what the impact is on your IT services. We go now to, let's switch gears a little bit, but still within a related practice. This is going to be risk management. So Doc, what can you tell us about risk management?
Well, from the idea, like you said, it's risk management out here. Again, it goes in policies and procedures that you're going to use for this. The idea is, how does it reduce the threats or vulnerabilities and the consequences that they provide, cause when data is not protected. Now, from a ServiceNow risk management, it detects a lot of data out there from a multitude of the data, especially in the CMDB, which we'll get to a bit, and it aggregates that across there to match that against what has already been listed as a risk or set up in the risk governance side of things there. So this is where we get to the CMDB side. It can look for specific things that are out there. It looks for a lot of risk in other areas. But from a CMDB perspective, we're wanting to say, okay, what are some known things that are known indicators that will cause risk out there for it, especially in the CIs. So we're looking for things like, hey, we haven't got a last patch date, or we haven't heard from these particular devices in X number of days. That can cause a risk factor coming in there. So those are some of the things that we're looking for. That's specific to individual CIs. You can also look at where it mixes in with change. And then you've got the change side of it. If we're getting a lot of emergency changes or changes in a specific location or in a time frame, we want to know why. That way we can figure out, is it causing a problem with it? What's that risk, to us? Is it a new change, or is there something else? So there's going to be a risk factor. And then the other part that we look at here is we turn around and we look at the dependency modeling. That's where you get to see the business service mapping type setup of there. It helps you visualize what's wrong with this. That way we can look at that to say, hey, this is the upstream side, this is the downstream side of this, so we can see those relationships. But it makes it easier for us to understand, we've got a problem with this device or a risk over there for it. What services is that going to affect? So risk management's got a lot of details in there, and I can only covering just a little bit of this here, obviously. Okay, Tark.
All right, thank you, sir. So moving on. So we're going to jump into sort of a subsection of IT operations. It's actually going to be cloud management. So I mentioned in the start, we're going to be covering this in a little bit more detail. It's pretty relevant because organizations these days have been increasingly leveraging the flexibility and power of cloud-based resources. The rapid rate of change associated with cloud environments requires more attention to keep costs in line. So people have the ability to go in and quickly deploy massive amounts of resources, but that has a cost attached to it. Cloud management, therefore, it plays a significant role in today's IT landscape. On the Now platform, we have both cloud discovery and cloud provisioning and governance applications available to us. CPG, Cloud Provisioning and Governance, it extends the basic cloud discovery feature set, and it adds a cloud portal through which IT users can request and control cloud resources. So you can go in there, spin up a stack, and later on you can go in, suspend, you can terminate, all from one place. Pretty cool stuff. The cloud catalog allows users to quickly request cloud computing resources while efficiently handling approvals and quotas right there within ServiceNow. All right, so let's see here. Gotcha. So yeah, so myth versus fact. Cloud and CMDB, and I'm gonna put this in double quotes here. Can the old school, right, or the traditional concept of the CMDB add value to today's highly dynamic and fluid cloud environments? And guess what? The answer is yes. ServiceNow's alert-driven discovery, it ingests AWS, Azure, and GCP events that are generated when a CI changes state. These events tell ServiceNow to either update the CI record immediately, or if a new VM has been spun up, run a targeted host discovery on the IP address of that system, that new system, to get this system-level information about the device. No need to wait for your cloud discovery schedule to run to get cloud CI updates. So if you have your schedule running every night at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., you don't have to wait 24 hours for the next refresh. It happens pretty much like that. How many times have we seen an alert come in for a cloud resource, and the only way to get information on the device is to log into the provider's portal? Well, this allows us to do everything in one place, right, with the cloud management. And then we have the ability in here to track attributes of different CIs. So for example, you spin up a stack, you have, or even without cloud provisioning, right, just using cloud discovery, if you have the ability to pull this stuff into your CMDB, you can assign ownership, you can group them using tag-based mapping, as we see right here, and that allows you to treat your cloud services the same as you would treat your on-prem services. And you can attach alerts, changes, and so on to these application services. Pretty cool stuff that ServiceNow has given us, especially in the last couple of years. So switching gears into IT business management. Now, this might be a strange one, right? So due to its mostly non-technical nature, the CMDB doesn't really play as heavy a role in ITBM as it does in the more technical areas. Still, especially in large, mature organizations, the CMDB does have a role to play, especially if ServiceNow's ITBM suite has been implemented. Enterprise architects, application owners, and portfolio planners, they generate opportunities and solutions to align technology decisions with business strategy. So we ask questions like, where is our organization headed? And what technologies do we need to get there? So to answer those questions, for example, we can view all capabilities of the business and understand what business applications and services provide those capabilities using a feature called capability mapping. And that obviously leverages the data in the CMDB. We also have application portfolio management that uses data from across other IT workflow products like ITSM, IT operations, IT asset and security and risk to extend the depth of information and provide a broader ecosystem to make technology decisions, such as whether to sustain, invest, or completely replace individual applications. Next one is Doc. Doc, so if you can tell us a little bit about CSM, please.
There we go. The CSM, Customer Service Management, like I said, it is out there to help companies turn around and help their customers out there throughout the life cycle of their interactions and their data. And of course, the better customer experience they get with it, the more retention they'll have, and it'll drive the sales side of it. And you will see that it's got all kinds of different solutions, typically has case management, all of these different features. Now, ServiceNow has obviously the customer service module, and it does all of these features. And then this particular one, it says, how does it take advantage of the CMDB? The biggest one that comes into it is it's got real-time visibility into the operational aspects of it. So it can see the associated products, its services. So we get to monitor those particular things. They can proactively look at it. They can find out if something's not right. And that way we can turn around and send notifications out to say, you're going to have a potential outage or a slowdown. So that way they do it. A lot of times you'll get that information before the customer actually even knows that something's going on. But then the next big one out of it is it enables the customers to do some self-service. That way they can look at, when they're in the system and they're looking at things, they may see some potential issues, whether it's with their router or hard drive going out, and they can take appropriate actions. There's guidelines set up in there, and it can go through that with them. So it's a lot of ITSM type actions that the customers get to do. So that's why it's customer service management is a nice use for the CMDB, because it's living on a lot of that particular data out there. Okay,
Thanks, Doc. Next slide.
All right, so this is our final slide. It's really the takeaway slide. And so we've gone through a fair amount of information today. I just wanted to maybe leave you with a few thoughts. The first one being the CMDB. We want to make sure this is, if you don't take anything from this presentation, it's the first one. we want you to take away, right? It's the CMDB can be leveraged by many areas of IT. So as we went through these use cases, hopefully you saw maybe something you can take away today, maybe something that you can talk about extending the platform to include additional applications. But whatever it is, hopefully you saw some of that today. The starting point is really to ensure that the health of the CMDB, you really want to prioritize accuracy before quantity. So as long as the CMDB is healthy, people can trust it, they will trust it, and then they can say, yes, listen, we have a solid CMDB, let's leverage it. If it needs work, I recommend start with the work before you add on to it. Ask why data isn't in the CMDB, and then work to incorporate that data. So for example, you go to a team and they have a set of devices, maybe, that's not in the CMDB. Why are these devices not here? But first, you want to make sure that you only incorporate data if the data can be owned. If that team is going to say, hey, you go ahead and put that stuff in ServiceNow, but we're not going to touch it, then it's probably not a good idea to put that data into ServiceNow. And then secondly, ensure that maintenance procedures are configured for each data set that you put into ServiceNow. So you want to make sure you understand how to tell whether this data is being updated on a good scheduled basis. And finally, ensure that any integration methods that you use, you implement ServiceNow's best practices and everything passes through that IRE that we mentioned. With that, we go ahead to the Q&A slide and see if we can tackle this. Now, we did have, I think.
We do have a question here.
Yep, okay.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm going to read it. It is, can on-prem discovery do a more event-driven discovery like cloud management? For instance, if we move virtual servers between data centers, can that trigger an update to the CMDB, or is an on-prem discovery limited to schedule-based updates?
That's an awesome question. And the answer is yes. So the same way that AWS and Azure work, right, those cloud systems, your vCenter has the same capability to set up an event-driven discovery. So absolutely, yes.
Awesome. Second question. Slide 22 states that purchase is included in the IT asset management. What is the best method of getting this data into and integrated into the CMDB? Easy to say that you can take your POs, contracts, and invoices to reference, but associating them to a CI is a challenge. Example, Jagger is a large tool that still doesn't have an API to ServiceNow CMDB.
Doc, you want to take this one?
Yeah, for the procurement data, when we're bringing in procurement data, that's actually going to go into the asset management side of it, more than likely, because it's going into the contract side of it and everything else. However, when we're putting that asset in there, if it's software or hardware for it that's got an associated CI, then we can put in the contract information. And that if it's a support agreement, we just assign that asset. And in cases, you assign a CI to that support agreement. So you can see when it got assigned to it, and that way you can see purchase data from it. Now, purchase data, again, is an asset functionality, but that way you can see and link over to the contract and get that data from the CI perspective. But
Awesome.
The easiest way to get in is going to have to be an integration. In some cases, if there's no integration, which there isn't, you can bring these in under a flat file and bring that in on a systematic time frame, so you can bring that in there. But you want to make sure you got a good transfer map and where it goes to.
Yep, thanks, Doc.
Okay, and one last question here. How does risk management know what to look at in the CMDB?
From parts of it here is risk management is going to be looking for the other people in the organization there with them. So they're looking at ITOM, the service management, asset management, security, all of those different areas. If they have identified that there is an issue out there that said, example, we don't know the location of these devices out there. That's a risk, because how do you pay the income tax or the property use tax? That may come from a finance side of it. So they're going to look and said, we need to know this information. So go out and look at this particular data to say, here's the data. Is it in the CMDB so you can use it? Yes. have it put out that there's a risk that we're not putting this information out there. That means that hopefully the ITSM side of it changes some of their processes and they put that data out there systematically when they're doing it. And then we only get to see the minor things that aren't showing up, so they're easier to fix.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we are at the hour here, so I just want to say thank you to all who just participated. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to everyone who set up this call. I know it's a lot of work in the background, so really, really appreciate it. Great, great information today. As always, please check in and look for future webinars in our educational series, and we will be sending out the recorded version of this. So look for that in your email boxes. And one last time, thank you all and happy Thanksgiving.